welcome at the very beginning. I was speaking as the academic, the professor from the U, right? Well, I'm going to put off that hat. I'm not going to speak as the academic. I'm going to speak as a religious person, a person who's worked on gender issues, and I'm hoping that we can have a very lively discussion. I should introduce myself as not the academic, but the activist. I'm Margaret Toscano. I have been involved in feminist theology and feminist activism for the last 30 years. I come from a Mormon background, long family tradition in that. I was excommunicated in the year 2000 for my advocacy of women being ordained. I still identify as Mormon, but I'm not LDS. I identify as a straight woman, but really, let's face it, identity is complex. I resonate with queer theology. I resonate with queer theory. There are many parts to myself. And I don't think any of us has one identity, do we? On the other hand, I don't want to appropriate the stories and position of other people. So I'm an LGBTQIA, I mean, how many initials could we put in here, right? Ally. And in fact, very early in my feminist writings and in my activism, I felt very strongly about speaking out for, and at that early point, I called it lesbian women, Mormon lesbian women. So that's me, but I'm not here to tell my story. I'm here to moderate and to let these 6 panelists tell their stories. So rather than give long introductions, let me just outline for you, because we didn't have a chance to talk about what we're going to do on our panel. But I see us as doing 3 different things on this panel. I want, first of all, for each of you to take 5 or 6 minutes and talk about your faith journey and who you are and why you're here. So we have altogether an hour and a half, and basically we have 3 things I want us to talk about. We're going to start out with stories. I love what Father Shea said about the importance of our stories. Those stories are powerful. So we'll start out with each of you telling something of your story and your journey and why you're here. That will be our first issue. The next question, and at this point I want it to get interactive, where we want each of you to have a chance to speak, but we can kind of jump in, right? And we're going to talk about the challenges. What are the major challenges we face in trying to create inclusive religious spaces? What are our challenges? You know, what are the obstacles? What are the problems? What do we need people to see and accept? So that's our second area. And then finally, our third area is what can we do to bring about change, which will include what has worked for you and what do you see as creative possibilities. So those are our 3 big areas: stories, problems, and change.
I think, as you said and I said, that the Mormon people and community are much broader than what outsiders see, and yet the Mormon hierarchy has bought into a political battle. So I don't know, is that part of one of our big obstacles, that, you know, conversations and things that could happen are somehow, the big obstacle is that we have this commitment to these political agendas that then become a huge obstacle. I mean, is this a big issue or not? Am I overplaying it, do you think, Troy?
No, I think it's integral to, the last 5 or 6 years. I mean, Prop 8 really just brought everything to a head. The church was involved in anti-gay marriage amendments in other states, but Prop 8 was this really zealous engagement in politics, unlike anything we'd ever seen before. And for folks who grew up LDS, it was so painful if you're queer, you know, and parents were forced to kind of be in this position of choosing church over child, and it was really devastating to our community here. You'll remember in 2008, you know, Obama was elected, and we were thrilled, and then Prop 8 passed in California. Yeah, we were devastated. And we had angry marches around the temple. And then we did kiss-ins, and we did all of these things. And it was extremely excruciating and painful. And we're still in that phase of trying to heal wounds from that time. And so when the church stands with us, as they did last week, some people are still suspicious. You know, what are they really trying to do?
Should we be suspicious? I found myself a little bit in that category, right?
Yeah, of course. Everybody, I'm not excited because I've been working with them for years now, and I'm extremely hopeful and thrilled by what happened last week and what's going to happen this week. But those wounds are still there, so that is our natural reflex to be suspicious.
I think of the politics not so much as an obstacle. I have a different frame for that. I think that the politics, the working for public policy, the important work that's being done in the legislature is the catalyst. You know, and in order to bring about change, to create a more inclusive world, a world with more understanding, more shalom, we have to grow. And it's kind of the pains of childbirth, of birthing us into a new place. So I don't see that as an obstacle. I see how we navigate through that as part of the shift in how we make change. And so I don't see it as a barrier, because if we weren't having the marriage conversation, we would not have made the progress that we have made in the last 10 years. If we didn't have a Prop 8, you wouldn't have the conversation that you're having right now. You know, it's kind of, we lost that one, but it changed a lot of things. We lost in 04, but look at how much it changed, right? And so I think that it's been a mechanism for us to have a deeper conversation.
It seems to be, because, I mean, it seemed at that point in 04 and in 08 that, you know, we lost. And then suddenly there was a shift. And now it seems to be, I mean, look at all the states now that are allowing same-sex marriage. I know. So how do we go from kind of the loss to the positive movement? How did that happen?
Number one is overreach on their part.
Definitely church.
2004, Amendment 3 passed. It was crafted by LeVar Christensen and Chris Butters and Gail Rosica. And without Amendment 3, I don't believe that we may not have gay marriage today in the States. We may have been one of those states that were kind of lagging behind. So I'm very grateful for them, actually. You'd be grateful for your adversaries, you know. Look back at Harvey Milk's day, he had Anita Bryant, you know, and that also, you know, was a catalyst. You kind of need that opposition in order to sort of galvanize the community.
I have to say that one of the really fascinating things about moving here, and I never lived in a place prior to moving here with functionally any Mormon presence whatsoever. And one of the fascinating things when we moved here, we were already married, and essentially lost our marriage from moving here.
I will interject, the running joke for a long time in our house was like, oh, well, we've Utah, so we're not married, but you also can't divorce me.
Yeah. And the amount of people who were very active in the Mormon church, who were roughly our age, fairly young, who pulled me aside and said, I'm really concerned about the fact that you're no longer married than you were, and about how you've been treated as a gay person here. And I mean, really, it was absolutely stunning to me, just the degree to which the sentiment wasn't, I have concerns about you being gay, but it was, I have concerns about that you're being treated poorly because you. And it was almost universal to a person.
And I think about what you said, Margaret, about suspicion. And I think those of us who have engaged with this for a very long time, and we have seen the angry face of the community, and I know that I have carried those experiences as obstacles in making relationship that can be renewed and different. And I just think about, I heard about Samuel Shepard's death when we were living in Japan, and I found out that my uncle had been a Sunday school teacher of the man who was then prosecuted into death. And I carried this, and then I reached across and I talked to my parents about it, and they said, you need to talk with your Uncle Bob. And so I called my Uncle Bob and had a conversation, and that opened up this whole huge story of the killer's mother, and also that my Uncle Bob had actually stopped going to church over all of this. All of these parts of the story that I had missed, and I think about those times that I have felt in between me and the people I love, this frontier, this of suspicion and difficulty, and that I have always been glad when I reached across that. And I think often we stand on the other side, we each are on the other side, and I believe we have this responsibility to tell these stories of how it went well. And to keep giving courage to people who are thinking, oh, my mother will do this. Well, she might not. And I have had, because I'm an older generation than you two, but I've had to go through these really hard times with my parents, and I would always wait and really pray for a time for openings. And usually it was, I'd wake up early in the morning and go into the kitchen, and there my mother would be. And that vulnerability, because it's that place of the heart where we can talk, and where where things really open and move ahead, and those barriers are taken down.
I really like what you're saying, Patty, because I think especially if we've been hurt and we have these wounds, we build up this kind of protection.
Yeah.
And we have to be open to let people change.
Yes.
And I was shocked last summer. I had lunch with my brother and his wife, and they're very active, and I thought just totally conservative Mormons. My sister-in-law said, I'm in favor of gay marriage. I was totally shocked. And she wouldn't have said that 5 years ago. She's changed. Mm-hmm. But I have to be willing to let them change. Mm-hmm. Not to be angry, so let my anger from the past hurt not allow them to change. Mm-hmm.
Did anybody listen to the Senate testimony yesterday when we were debating 269? Historic first time of pro-gay legislation going to the Senate floor, and passed 23 to 5. And people, very conservative legislators stood up and talked about how their hearts had changed, and it was overwhelmingly beautiful. And these are people that fought us fiercely on marriage, and said horrible things about us. And you have to create a space for the change.
Yeah, let them change.
Yes.
And I really got to give so much credit to a couple people, but one is Senator Jim DeBacchus. After Prop 8 hit, he's our gay senator that we have here, and he kind of has this irresistible personality. He talks like this, and everything's bigger than life, and he's like 5 years ago, he's like, Troy, I need you to come with me to meet with the church. And I'm like, what? I can't. No, and he's like, no, I need you to come and meet with the church. And okay, all right. So, I was terrified the first time I went in. I hadn't put a tie on in years. I was like, oh. But he has this persistent engagement with people. And then my predecessor at Quality Utah was Brandy Balkin. And again, she has this grace about her. She's persistently continued to engage leaders of the church. And like Jim Hurt, this wouldn't go away. And it kind of wears you down after a while because you fall in love with them. And the Senate and the leaders of the church have fallen in love with Jim DeBacchus. And it's changed everything. And I was born and raised in Eugene, Oregon, and that was my home growing up in a Mormon household. I went on a mission at 19 years old to England, and I'm queer, and I've always been that way. And I remember I had the earliest memories of being probably 8 years old and lying in bed and thinking, why can't two guys get married? And it seemed like it's no-brainer to me, but you know, that was properly socialized out of me through school and church and family, etc. And I was very scared. I grew up as a teenager in the 80s, and so the idea of gay identity was also shaped by the AIDS epidemic, and there was a certain terror about growing up thinking, is this my fate? Is this my destiny? So it was a very fearful time, and I could not possibly imagine for myself a positive future as a gay person. And with the church, I didn't really identify as gay. It was just, you know, experiencing same-sex attractions, and I felt cursed. I felt, I remember like the last probably 6 months of my mission, I was so terrified, and I never had acted out beforehand, though I was in love with my best friend in high school, as many of us were. Though I never acted out on my mission, the feelings were so strong. I felt like pain across the back of my shoulders because of this thing. I felt it was like because of, you know, the Satan was coming after me, and it was just this intense stress. And so I had this increasing anxiety. I thought, I am super righteous. If I'm turbo righteous, this will go away. So when I came up on my mission, I thought, what can I do to be the most righteous thing possible? And so I ran to the one place that was the farthest from being gay, and that was the Utah Eagle Forum. And Gail Mazika was my political mentor. And she was the first person to take me up to Capitol Hill. I was like, you know, she has all the kids around her and the little interns running around. And that was me at the time. And she taught me how the legislature actually works, and how you lobby, and how bills are written, amended, passed, etc. But you know, I grew up in Eugene, Oregon, you know, so I met all of that was still in my DNA as well, and so that kind of like kicked in after a while, and I was like, hey, this is crazy. What am I doing? I tried to go to BYU. I only made it through one semester, and things were either falling apart or coming together. I haven't figured that yet, but and then I still kind of wandered a little bit, and I would read stuff that Margaret would write, and my brain started going, oh my gosh, and got into liberal Mormonism and kind of obsessive about it. And I always loved it. I mean, I am Mormon to my core. I'm not LDS anymore, but I am Mormon to my core, and I love the history. I love all of it. And so eventually, I came out, and I knew my relationships with people were really in bad shape. I mean, like abstaining from intimate relationships and being celibate actually kind of messes up your brain. And I realized that my quality of my friendships and my relationships were damaged. I had a hard time maintaining friends. I had a hard time having good relationships with my parents and my siblings. It wasn't until I actually had a boyfriend for a long period of time that I began to sort of become normal. And actually my personal relationships with my family and friends improved exponentially as I worked through that. I became an activist after a while, and a talk radio producer and host at KRCL. And most recently I became the executive director of Equality Utah, and that's where I'm at right now. And so I recently at the Capitol, at the beginning of the Utah legislature, I walked up to Gail and I gave her a big hug, and how are you doing? And all these little interns were there, and I looked at them and I said, I used to be just like you, and I am living proof that if you continue to work hard, you too can one day be the executive director of Equality. And so Gail was like, and I've been through the angry phase. I think it's kind of an important thing to do with religion and faith, and especially through the Prop 8 and all of those political battles with the church. But some tremendous things have happened since Prop 8. Prop 8 was really it sort of was a game changer on so many levels, and so many active Mormons started coming forth and supporting LGBT folks, and it was unprecedented. I helped organize the 2012 march with Mormons Building Bridges, and And I was going like, let's put them in the front of the parade and see what happens. And we did that, and we made international news with this event. And this Mormon Buildings Bridges event was so phenomenal because it changed the game. And when they came to me and said, should we do this? I was terrified for them. Because I didn't know that the wounds were so fresh and raw from Prop 8. And I was worried that our community would be cruel to all these folks. Like, we want to dress in our church clothes and sing hymns. And I'm like, really? And I was scared, and yet we did it. And our community welcomed them with cheers and tears and applause. And people would run out and give them hugs, and we were crying, and the Mormons were crying, and our community was crying, and there was this really powerful sense of forgiveness that happened. And I realized, wow, there's an energy here that we can work with. And a lot of activism changed at that point. And with Equality Utah, we've been working extremely hard in building relationships with the leaders of the LDS Church and working to create positive change in the state. And it's always been difficult. But So anyway, so that's the work that I'm engaged in right now. All right, and I thought, wow, because it's vague, it kind of becomes a Rorschach test, and everyone's projecting onto it. But we actually had a singular moment with that, and I called up some of our great faith leaders here, and I said, will you join me at a press conference? And let's actually talk about religious liberty, LGBT rights, break down this paradigm that you're talking about. And it was this powerful moment. We crafted a letter, we delivered it to every legislator, and said that, for us, LGBT rights and religious liberty can coexist. It was a powerful moment, and we helped shape the discourse. Many states across the nation are dealing with what we call RFRAs, religious liberties, which have broad exemptions. We're not dealing with that in the legislation we're going to pass this week. And it's because of these folks who really helped shape the discourse here.